Thank you guys for coming. I'm glad that you all were able to come. Sorry that I'm having to sit here on behalf of my dad, because I would rather be sitting out there or over there anyway. Well, welcome to the Sunday Talk. I'm Alan Masters, sitting in for my father today. As you know, he's 90 years old, and he's a little under the weather. I think at that age, it's fair to get a day off every so often, and he's had a few more than he wants. But I know that he did want to talk about that all roads lead to one place in life at the end of the day. And had many talks with him. When I get to sit and just talk with my dad at this stage of his life, he's opening up to me a lot more. If you want to know the truth, I think a lot of people think that being the son or daughter of Roy Masters, we have an edge because our father shares with us things that he may not share with the rest of the world, or we get our one-on-one time with him. And it is true that we do get our one-on-one time with him, but most of the time he's telling us we're fat, or the same thing he tells you guys, or you're reacting too much to your wife, or you should, why aren't you making more money, or the kind of things that parents talk to their kids about. It's not just Roy Masters talking to his kids in a different, quiet, private kind of way. He's still a parent. He's still a dad. And my mom is still a mom. And I think that many of the problems that we all have in this whole world are very, very similar. And I think that my dad, he recognized that along the way. We're all just kind of cookie cutter people. And the difference is that if you become awakened to your inner self, you actually have a different chance in life than others. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So my father said, I want to talk about that all things are like, a tree. All the roots of the tree go out in all these different directions. And all things come back to the center, and then they go out. You see the branches of the tree. And below the surface are the same type of branches. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a tree. They've done drawings of trees where the roots under the ground look very similar to the branches above the ground. And so there's all things going on underneath that we don't see. And so all things do kind of lead to the same place and or to a different place. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, what I realize my father means is that all of your reactions, all of the way that you deal with each thing that happens in your life every day, all comes back to the same place and will take you to that same place. And it's either the wrong place or it's the right place. And it depends on each reaction that you make. And so in watching my father go through what he's going through, it's not easy for me because, yes, I do have a special father, and I've been able to be a sponge in my life and learn a lot from his life, his teachings, his philosophy, his outlook on life. I've been able to learn a lot from that. But at the end of the day, I don't think that really most of you have really any different opportunity than I have in this life. Many of you have been listening to my father 30, 40, 50 years. And so you hear the same principles. Don't react. Don't overreact. I mean, it really isn't don't react, because first thing that happens, somebody's cruel to you, something happens, you get pissed off, you get angry, you want to get even, your mind starts spinning. I've referred to it before like surfing. A wave comes. If you've ever surfed or seen surfers, here comes this swell. And here comes a swell of emotion. It's the same kind of thing. The swell comes and you're like, I want to ride that swell. And if you choose to ride that swell, you're going to get a free ride. The question is, where's it going to take you? Right? And so the question is, do you take that swell? Do you take that ride? Or do you look at that just like a surfer does and analyze each one? No, that's not a good wave. No, that's not a good emotion. No, that's not a good thought. So we'll liken from the surfer to the same way that you ought to be taking a look and being observant of your thoughts, of your emotions, and how you are starting to react. And you have to make that choice. You are the sum total of all your choices every day. And throughout your life, if you take all those choices that you make throughout your entire life, that's who you are today. And how many times have we all heard that, today is the first day of the rest of your life? And we've heard that saying, and we're like, yeah, okay. Well, it really is true. You can either choose to take the swell, every wave. As a surfer, if you watch and I used to be a surfer because I grew up in California and on the beach, and I haven't surfed in so long, I figured they'd probably harpoon me thinking I was a whale that was too close to the shore. But I haven't surfed in a long time. But the really good surfers, they wait. They watch. They're watching for that right wave that's got a certain amount of height to it over the rest of the other waves because they want to get the best ride that they can. That's the kind of the art and science of surfing, is watching the swells. If there's an art and science to life and the swells are coming at you, things that are happening in your life, people that are tempting you to take the wrong direction, whether it's drugs or distraction, one distraction or other, doesn't matter. Even if it's just somebody tempting you to get angry, those are all like swells to the surfer. So if there's an art and science to our lives, we have to look at those swells and say, just like the professional surfer does, no, that's not a good one. I'll let it pass. No, that's not a good one, because they're going to come. The swells are going to keep coming and keep coming. The waves that break on the ocean, on the beach, are endless. They keep coming and they keep coming. And maybe there's a little area where there's not too big of a wave. Maybe it's just little ripples, and all of a sudden here comes a big set of waves coming in. It's the same with life. The temptations coming at you. And you have to learn, we all have to learn to choose not to take those waves, to choose not to react to things that are happening to us. So I deal with my father, he's my father. I love him. But I have to look at the same kind of, the swells that come, the temptation to get angry at him, temptation to be impatient with him. It's like, what, are you stupid? No. I have to look at that. It would be easy to just be an animal and react. Animals just react. They have no conscience about what they do. They just react. It's that fight or flight mode. If you scare them, they're either going to turn and fight you to protect, or they're going to run. But we have to be more than animals. We have to learn how to discern between somebody who's attacking us and somebody who's just trying to get us to react. It happens all the time. And then sometimes somebody can come at you and say something very calmly and softly and try to get inside your head. So I've told a lot of people, guard your mind. Guard your mind. Because if you're not on guard, it's just like when you're driving a car. If you close your eyes while you're driving a car, you're going to run right off the road. If you close your mind's eye while you're walking through your life, somebody's going to take advantage of you. So you have to be aware, have to be consciously thoughtful of, you have one body, one life, one mind, one soul. You better protect it with everything you have. So just being in your center, being aware, being conscious, very important. I was at an event the other day, and I had seen a friend make a post on Facebook that some friend of his died. And he said, rest in peace, so-and-so. You helped me in my life more than you'll ever know. So I saw the guy just out of the blue. I was like, wow, he lives in San Diego. I happened to find myself in San Diego with a bit of business, and there he is. I just saw your post. Who was that guy? And he says, oh, he was just a guy that I went to high school and junior high school with. And I said, well, what was it that you were talking about? He helped you more than you'll ever know. And I think you guys have that with my dad. Just his ramblings and his talking, and years after years after years. For us on this side of the fence, we've heard my father say these things 100 million times. And it's like, all right, I get it, even though we don't always get it either, just so you know. But he said, well, when I was in 7th grade, and this is a very interesting time of all of our lives, 7th and 8th grade. He said, I was a big kid. He says, and some guy was going to fight me, and he was calling me names, and he was trying to get me to get angry. And this was such an interesting conversation. He says, and my friend saw what was going on, and he could see that I was just starting to get so angry. And he said, he walked over to me and he says, Jim, catch yourself. What good is going to come out of this? He just wants you to get angry. He wants you to get angry. Then he's got you because you're going to be fighting without any thought. And you're going to look crazy to everyone. And I thought, wow, one little 7th grade kid to another. And he says, that was the first time in my life I ever really thought an original thought. Yes, he's right. I have to be in control here. And I thought, isn't that interesting that little boy, wherever he came from in his life, had that awareness to tell the other little boy, catch yourself, be aware, guard your mind. You can beat him up with your fists, but your mind is the one that wins the battle.
You were talking about your dad and how how those words are so important to us, and we hear them. It's written that when Jesus comes, his words will be more precious than gold. And, I have heard those words from your father, and there's no way to really explain that. If, when these words touch the truth in you, there's no way to say how that changes your life, but it does.
Yeah. And when Santa Claus says it, you know it's true. Thank you, Santa. Thank you. So I know that it's important that we hear these things over and over again, because obviously we could hear the truth once and we go, that's the truth. But we're human beings and we forget things and things slip away slowly. We get distracted. So I realize the value of all that my father has done all these years, and the same with all that were before him that brought truth to the forefront. And that's why I want to make sure that the foundation with my father's 50 years of teachings goes on into the future. We have 50 years of my father being on the radio and 50 years of teachings of 5 days a week, and then his talks on Sunday and his TV episodes that he's done on all kinds of TV shows, and you guys have all seen them all. Hopefully, for our children and our grandchildren, we can take those and actually put those into a format, today's format, where they're searchable. And that's what the FHU Legacy Project is all about. I've talked about that for a couple of years, and now being the president of the foundation and the chairman of the board, I have the responsibility to make sure that goes on. So when my father isn't able to do the talks, I'm happy to do it. Chuck has done it before. There may be a chance for other people to do it because I'm not always going to be able to be here on Sundays. And I think that, this has got to be kind of a community. And I feel like that when I watch the comments on Facebook of people all over the world that are saying things to my father has been posting some chapters out of his different books and things. And he talks about everything from the gravity-driven universe to not reacting to your wife or your child or your husband or whatever it is, and everything in between that we all know, but we need to hear it multiple times. That's just human nature. And then until such times as it becomes part of us. And then it becomes very easy. And it's not easy until it becomes easy. And how it becomes easy, I believe, is when you bring it into yourself. When you absolutely know what you know and you believe what you believe, and it becomes part of you. Your belief system becomes you. You become it. And I don't know if I'm articulating that very well, but in my lifetime, I'm going to be 60 here coming up. I used to think my dad was crazy when I was a kid. I used to tell my friends, my dad's this crazy psychologist. You got to protect me from him. I literally said that to one of my friends when I was like 16. Of course, we went out and worked on cars, and my dad came and found me, and I was grounded, so I had to go back home. And then, I remember one day with the aha experience, oh, he was right about that. Oh, man, I feel bad now because he was really right about that. So anyway, I just realized the aha moment is very, very important to all of us. And whenever that happens, it can happen at the last moment of your life. And that's why I think even with Jesus was on the cross with these others, and one guy was just being nasty mouth, being bitter about life, and the other one said, stop it. He doesn't deserve to be here. He didn't do the things wrong that we have. And while they were on the cross, the guy was saved, right? He said, you'll be in paradise with me. So till the very, 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 very end, we have the opportunity. So we don't know when that's going to be. We hope it's sooner than later. We wish for it for our family members. I've heard a number of stories. My sister told a story the other day about her mother-in-law who was bitter to her for the last 40 years. Just bitter, 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 bitter. And she called her like a couple of days before she died, and she said, I'm sorry for what I've done. She was having maybe a few moments of life review, and she called and apologized to all her kids and kind of made her peace with everybody. And she said, I couldn't believe it. She never called her by her first name. My sister always called her mother-in-law Mrs. Linderman. She said, I couldn't, she said that when she first met her, she said, my name's Mrs. Linderman. That's what you'll call me. And so, we all have to go through these silliness. It's sad and unfortunate, but we have until the last day. Now, I believe that the longer we wait as we're going through our lives, if we think, well, I've got till the very end, so I'm going to have some fun, I think that you'll wake up and probably realize that you've waited too long. One of my kids said to me last night, every time, this is very interesting, this is my brother Mark's son who's living with me right now. He was very sweet. He said, thank you for giving me an opportunity, your spare room, so that I can build my canoe and I can row off to my own island. And he says, I really appreciate it. And he was being very thoughtful and appreciative. And then he says, I realize that every time I make the wrong choice, it's like swiping a credit card. He said, I swipe a credit card, and now there's a debt to be paid. And I was like, wow, that is so true right there. He said, now you're paying installment payments on a debt, and it's really the days of your life, and it's the family members that you're hurting and destroying. Isn't that interesting that every time you make the wrong choice, swipe a credit card, and you now have a debt to pay? Who are you paying that debt to? That's the question. It's not him. So just remember that, Santa. So I think, for me, I've had to go through a lot of trials and tribulations with my family, with my children, with my parents. When I say my family, my extended family, brothers and sisters, and then the family members of those families. So if you think that, it's just you in this world, there's a ripple effect that goes out. That ripple effect affects everybody that knows you, that watches you. And with me, it's pretty big because I have all these nieces and nephews, and then my father's, great-grandchildren, what are those, grandnieces and nephews, and friends of those people. And I used to think when I was younger, I thought, I can do whatever I want. It's like the leash is off of my neck. When you're young, you think your parents are just holding on to your leash. And it's a choker chain. They can choke you in, right? And they can because you're living at their house. And then so you go out into life and you're like, I can do what I want now. I can do wrong. I can do right. I can drink. I can do what the hell I want. I can cheat. Wow. It's such a crazy thing. And I think all young people have to go through falling down. And so then you fall down. We all fall down. We all fall down. What does falling down do for us? It makes us stop, think, and decide, do I want to do that again? Or we say to ourselves, I don't want that to happen again. So how many times do we fall down and chip our teeth and elbows and legs and arms and, heads? And I have a friend who got into a car crash. He actually asked to borrow a car from me so he could go to the laundromat. He already had one arm. I don't know if you guys remember Smitty. He used to work at Tall Timber Ranch many years ago. And he came there because he'd gotten drunk. He went on a motorcycle ride with his girlfriend on the back, got into a car crash, lost his arm, caught on fire. His girlfriend died. He's burned all over his whole body. And he finds my dad while he's lying in the hospital. His sister brings him to my father, basically, who got drunk, got into a horrible car crash, and ended up having to walk with a cane with a horrible thing. So he asked me, he's working for me. He was working at Tall Timber Ranch, and then he came to work for me, and he says, can I borrow a car? I just want to go to the laundromat and do my laundry. He was living in a little travel trailer on my property. And I said, yeah, all right, you can use that old car over there. Just don't go anywhere else. Well, he went right to the bar, got drunk, was going up the wrong way, a one-way street here in town, runs right into a telephone pole. The car catches on fire, puts his face through the windshield, right, and then falls back in there. His face is all cut open, bloody and everything. The fire truck gets there, reaches in to pull him out, goes, oh my God, he's got an arm missing! And they pull him out. He's all bloody and horrible, and they drag him out. And he was a huge man, like 285 pounds. So it takes several guys, and the one guy looks at him and goes, oh, I recognize this guy. The arm was already gone. Can you imagine what those poor people have to go through? I have such a huge amount of respect for caregivers, I got to tell you, after dealing with what I've been dealing with. So he goes to the hospital, and his mouth gets cut all the way back to here, to where... And cuts in his face because he put his face right through the windshield. So I took a picture of him. When he finally came home from the hospital, he looked honestly like a stitch-up basketball. His face was round from swelling, black and blue, and stitches on his eyes and forehead and all the way up here, and just a horrible, horrible picture. I took a Polaroid and I put that on his front door, inside of his trailer. I said, you look at that every time you go outside and know that you not only lied to me because you told me you were going to only go to but you almost got killed again. And you know what he says to me? God must really want me to do something good in my life because otherwise he'd just let me die. And I remember going, wow, this guy has a death wish. He doesn't care. Doesn't care. There's a tiny little bit of him inside that does care, that wants to get better. And I just said to him, God will let you cut all your arms and legs off and do whatever you want to do. You can do to yourself whatever you want to do. God's not going to stop that. Those are your choices. But you are the sum total of all your choices, like I said earlier. If you're just basically, what do they call a guy with no arms and legs in a hot tub? Bob or Stu? Stu. If you want to be that way in your life, God's going to let you. He's not going to stop you. He wants to help you make the right decisions. So when you're making the right decisions, you'll see that doors start opening. When you start making the right decisions, that's when you'll see God helps those who help themselves. So it's very sad, but watching people, watching my life, watching my children, watching my nieces and nephews make the wrong decisions. I want to go over and shake them. Don't you have a friend in your life that you want to just shake and go, stop it?
Do you know how to get a one-armed man out of a tree?
Wave at him. Anybody have any questions?
For me, in my relationship with your dad, I mean, I want to come because I want to sit here because it's later. It's something beyond words. It's something deep. But your dad always says, or has said, you people are not yourself. So I like to question what is not myself, and how I want to make sense of it. There's this whole other world going on underneath. And how, and your dad, you know, he wants us to be our true self. Or God wants us to be our true self, the self that we were before we got separated. So it's not done me a lot of good in life to take responsibility for. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like I've tried to be regimented with things, but you say take responsibility.
Here's what it sounds like to me.
Oh.
That you're intellectually going through these kind of motions, okay? Does it, I mean, so you say you've tried to be
Right.
organized, responsible, and there's an intellectual side of us
Right.
that we think,
But-
first if we, you know what they say, fake it until you make it, right?
Right.
So a lot of us try and fake it until we make it because at least we know we're trying our butts off to go in this direction, and we're faking it until we can kind of.
I remember your dad walked up to me after a talk one day, just quietly, and he said, "Stop trying to be a good person."
Yeah,
And I thought that was so interesting.
yeah.
And I'm not trying to make this
You know
confusing.
why? The trying to be a good person
Yeah.
gets in the way of actually being the good person.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, life is really, really simple. And if you just be still and know, what does it say on the wall behind me? Be still and know that I am God, right? So if you give up trying, and of yourself you can do nothing, and just start being a gracious person, being a good person, kind person, a person also that doesn't let somebody else take advantage of them, because while you're so busy trying to be, you're forgetting to be yourself, because you're trying to be something
Right.
that you think is what you're supposed to be.
Right.
Just be. Just live your life, do what's right, be kind, be thoughtful, be thankful to your Creator, be still. Just keep yourself busy, because I mean, it's like at some point you can't just sit there and wait for God to, I said this 35 years ago. A lot of us sit and wait for a rock to come through the window with a note on it that says, "Get out of your chair and go do something from God." It's not going to happen. God's going to let us crash and destroy ourselves.
Right.
Be intentional in your life. So whatever your job is, do it well. Do your job well, whatever it is.
Right.
Your life will give you a million billion opportunities to live with intent, to be still and know that you have to get up, start your day, go eat something healthy. I mean, let it start from the moment you wake up, the moment you open your eyes. Be thankful. Don't just wake up and go, "Oh, geez, another day," right? That's kind of being just miserable. Open your eyes and be thankful that you're on this side of the ground, right? Be thankful. What can I do with my life, Lord, to serve you today? You bump into somebody that looks like they're having a rough day. I do it in an elevator. I watch my dad my whole life. I said to somebody, my dad even does that in the elevator. He's got 30 seconds. You know the original elevator pitch? My dad invented it. Seriously. Because he would be in the elevator and he'd say, "Well, you're looking a little fat today." And so whatever it is to get that person to communicate. What are you talking about? "Well, I just see if you're there, if you're awake, if you're alive. How are you doing?" It's like, he's in an elevator going up a few floors. The next thing you know, they step outside the elevator and they're having a conversation. "I can help you with that, Here, I've got a book. Check out my website." My dad does the elevator pitch and then gets the extended version of it by stepping out. Then he gets back on the elevator and goes where he's going. It's not that you have to be that way. That's his calling. He felt in his life that God had given him these gifts and he's got to share them. Got to share them. Even while he's at his house. And he says, "I'm just rotting here. I need to help people." This man right here in the front row, my dad talks about him all the time. He's given you more thought than you're giving yourself. Just so you know. This guy right here. So, and the same with many of you. He will give you more thought than you give your own self. We distract ourselves so we don't have to think about ourselves. We don't want to think about how do I really fix this problem? This is where I'll talk about my life and what I'm going through and what I'm into in the job that I have, which is the job of higher thinkers. What is that? What is a higher thinker? A higher thinker is a person in business that wants to take their business to the next level, and in the entrepreneur world, they call it higher thinking. Well, shouldn't all thinking be higher thinking? No, it's not. It's just thinking. It's not even thinking. It's just living. They don't even want to talk too much about thinking, you know. So I go to these symposiums, and I get paid to go to these things to listen to speakers, and I go, yeah, that makes sense. That's a good idea. Yeah, I like that. And all it is what Cheryl was talking about, all kinds of things that we can write down, and we can go, yeah, that makes sense. That was a good one there. I like that one. And then we all take notes and do things like that. And I see that just a tiny little change in people's lives, in their business, shifts them into another gear, and they start accelerating in growth. But it's so funny because they talk about all the things you have to do on a business level to grow your business. And I always think, man, well, no, it makes perfect sense to grow your business. But what about it? What about this part over here, this most important part, the foundation? It's like, you want to build a house? We'll show you how to do it without a foundation. You can build walls and a roof. But the foundation of it there's got to be a foundation of some kind of faith in there, some kind of understanding of life and human nature, human understanding, the foundation of human understanding. Because then you can apply all these things. Yeah, you can apply them without God and become monetarily successful. But how happy can you really be? What profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul in the process? You can't be happy. You gain everything in the whole world. You have big boats and parties and all that. Those people are not happy. Momentarily, they're like, yeah, drinking and taking drugs and all that. They look kind of like they're having fun, and something inside of you, like, you know, you've seen the Pinocchio, when the Pinocchio ears start to grow, and you're like, what was that? Right? Remember that? Even Pinocchio, that for the kids, even the little kids know the difference between good, clean fun, going fishing, working in the garden, enjoying watching your plants grow, that kind of good, clean fun, and this crazy nightlife that is taking over, that is really taking the souls of those who are, because they're swiping that credit card. Swipe, 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 swipe. The bill gets taller and higher, and the debt gets greater. You can't ever repay that debt. So, with that said, a person really needs to make sure that they deal with that credit card machine properly, because the two worlds do blend together. They really do. Your business life, how you deal with business and how you deal with your children, your wife, your husband, your ex-husband or wife, your parents, it's all relative. It's all sewn together in the fabric of your life. Just don't forget that. So when you get to the point where I'm watching my father in his sunset of his life and my mother, and no matter what, the sun's going to hang there on the horizon for a while. I don't know how long. He may last another 10 years. He always says, I'm going to make 100. He may. I hope to God he does, because it's all that much more I can learn and you can learn. Then I hear from people, I delete them, see comments, why do you even let this insane old man talk? And I delete, don't need that kind of idiot. Go somewhere else on Facebook, Why do you keep coming back to his Facebook page? That's the funny thing. So, you know what? He's got something good to say. And I'm going to help him say it as long as he wants to say it. And as long as you guys want to hear it. And then there may be me sitting here or any, whoever else wants to do a rap session or a meeting. We used to do rap sessions. Everybody could talk and talk. And believe it or not, when you open your heart and you start talking and not be afraid to say what's in your heart and your mind, something changes in you. So that's why we have the microphone that floats around so you guys can ask questions, make comments. It's good for you. Otherwise, you're like a constipated mind, you know.
I could relate to really well to one of the things you said, that you can't just sit there and, you know, meditate, and there has to be some action. Because in my life, for a number of years, I was going through a kind of like a midlife crisis, and I continued to meditate, but I knew that there was something that I had to go back to, something that I had to face, you know. And I had a pattern in my life of running from when something got really heated, I would just flee. I would leave.
Well, that's the easy way out.
Yeah, and it was a pattern that had developed in my life. So at this point, you know, it was, you know, I knew every single day of my life I would pass this place, you know, and I knew I had to go back there. This went on for years, and finally, you know, I'm saying this because really what it came down to was I just was a coward, you know, and I didn't want to feel the fear.
You know what? That brings a good point. Let me stop you there. I have a friend who wrote a book called Illuminate. And I saw it on the table the way you walk across the front of the, you know, coming in, there's all these books. And I saw it and I thought, oh, you know, must be into lighting. Didn't know what it was, didn't care. He got up on stage and started talking about that exact thing. He said, and my father has said this to me before. He says, when you have problems, he said, you have a choice to make. You can either turn and walk away from them, like, because I don't want to face that, I don't want to deal with it, or you can illuminate it, shine a light on it, take a look at it, find it, follow it, fix it. That's what he said. Illuminate. Illuminate your problems. And I went, wow, that is so good. Because we all do what you did until the day you made the choice to find it, to go back and look at it, follow it to its source.
Right.
Illuminate it and fix it.
And then the pattern switched. Then my whole life flipped around, and I did things in my life, like I got into sales, where before I was a messenger for years to stay on my own. Then things just naturally turned around, and then things started to flower. Then I started to get ideas, and I haven't been great at this invention thing, but I had this wonderful idea, and I'm working on it. So
but see how your life started. Your life started to grow. It started to sprout.
Yeah, it was
to unfold like a flower.
Because I was being unchained from this. My soul was in chains from my childhood.
Who did that? You do it to yourself. You do it yourself until such time, and that's what this is all about, you guys. That's what the importance of this kind of discussion is all about, is to hear that same kind of thing that maybe each one of you are going like, yeah, I know how that feels. And then when you witness somebody else who has grown from simply illuminating a problem, stopping to, just go, oh, it won't, it doesn't matter, it's done, forgetting to apologize for something you might have done wrong. Have you ever had somebody come up to you? I'd like to see a raise of hand. Have you ever had somebody come up to you that you haven't seen for a while and they go, hey, you know what, I was really a jerk. I'm really sorry about that, 5 years ago. Right? Wasn't that nice? Not because it made you feel good, but because you're happy that person finally did what he did, which was to turn and illuminate their problems and then go back and say something. My dad called me the other day and I was telling Chuck, and we get into these. I'm right now spending a lot of time with my dad for the last 6 months. And he called me and he says, I apologize. And I was like, okay. I thought, because human nature is to make an excuse for why you did it, whatever it was. Doesn't matter what it was. That's all. I'm like, okay. And I sent a note to my wife. My dad just called and apologized. There was no excuse connected to it. What good is an apology if you're going to excuse it away? What good is an apology? It's sweet when it's just an apology. That's the beauty of it is to just simply acknowledge the other person that, I don't even need to know what it was. I didn't say, what were you apologizing for? Because the intellectual side of the mind wants to make sure that the apology is for everything you did wrong, for the rest of my life and for the beginning of my life. No, it doesn't matter. It matters that he loved me enough to give me that little bit of, he understands what I was saying about, I'm not even 100% sure what it was. But it didn't even matter because let's start over. Isn't that what it is? When you apologize, it wipes the chalkboard clean and you start over fresh from that very moment. That's the beauty of an apology without an excuse attached to it. The excuse attached to it is a ball of poison that's connected that will come back. So anytime you hear an apology and it isn't just, hey, I apologize. You know what it was. So I apologize. It's a beautiful thing, right? And I learned something right there. Right there. I got to feel from the man a perfect apology. And I thought to myself, I know it when I see it. Don't you guys know things I know what I know, and I know it when I see it. And when you see a perfect apology, it's like, wow, there it is. So now I know what a perfect apology looks like and felt like. So I hope that as I move forward, when I have the opportunity, which ain't going to happen, that I will be able to give the perfect apology. My son's sitting over here going, So look, life can be fun, right? Life can be a nightmare, but life can also be fun. I know without a shadow of a doubt that without suffering, we would never make it into the promised land. Never. God did not create this world and put us on it to have a whole bunch of fun. He put us on it to suffer. And through that suffering is how we will become free. And through not hating it and knowing that there's a purpose for every single bit of it. A lot of it's self-inflicted. The majority of it. But that's the way it's created for us. If you don't like suffering, stop doing stupid things. If you don't like suffering, be a higher thinker. If you don't like suffering, be still and know that He is God. And of yourself you can do nothing. And suffering tends to slip away. And while you're in suffering, know there's a purpose for it. Seek. There's another interesting word. Seek the answer. You can look up the word seek. Because it's like when you say, I've been looking, I've been doing, I've been acting out. Seek the answers. Seek the truth. And know that suffering has a purpose. And once you embrace it and realize that it is here for a reason, guardrails on the side of the road for a reason, you run into it, you can either turn into it harder and then break it and have it go out and you're flying through the air and you're done, or you can go, woo, and you can correct yourself. Correct through steering into a different direction in your life, through seeking the proper path. And I think that we are all blessed to have a guy like my dad who has, brought us together, to a lot of us to know each other for many, many, many years and watch each other and be able to converse with each other and sometimes illuminate each other's problems and issues, sometimes to make them worse through fighting and arguing and, but it's all part of our journey together on this planet. And I always feel like that, just like my dad gets in an elevator and he wants to try and help people. You can ask my son. He was with me for a couple days. You know, I'm always talking to people, always joking around a little bit, see what's there, and just be willing to be happy and that you're alive today. And I look at my new grandson who, wow, if I could just have that joy, you know, the experience of a taste, the experience of as he's experiencing life through his mouth right now, through all of a sudden he starts to understand Grandpa's going, and it's funny, you know, instead of being, getting scared. We're all still going through that same stuff too, but what happens is the journey, as we become bitter, we start to become like put on these glasses that are brown and everything is colored brown. And it's just so interesting. Everything has that hue of bitterness, anger, hatred, and our faces start looking like it. And yes.
I'd like to talk about my son a little bit, if I may. He has been living in Southern California for the last almost 20 years. He has a practice down there, and about a year and a half ago, he was thinking that he would want to move back up here and start a practice up here because he's sick and tired of California. And I thought that was so great because I'm waiting for him to come back for such a long time. And then all of a sudden he meets a woman down in Southern California, and she's from New Zealand. I'm getting emotional.
So he wants to go to New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe she's pretty good looking. You might want to.
Well, they're getting married in January, and I'm 99% sure they're going to move to New Zealand. And so this is a big shock to me. And so I'm wondering, why is it hitting me so hard? And I can't be part of my grandchildren's lives, and I was so looking forward to that. And he's my only family.
So you have to just.
And I thought I'd let go of it, but I can see I haven't.
Well, you just have to make choices about, you know, your life and whether you want to follow your son to New Zealand or not. And I mean, these are just human. These are like very normal human things that happen. I don't even like my sister moving to Texas. But you know what? Who am I? I can't stop her from living her life.
No, I can't. I know.
Right?
I want him to be happy, and I want him to go where he wants to be.
Right.
It's just that he won't be here later on.
Well, let me tell you,
if
as
I
a brand
need
new
him.
grandfather, when that baby is born, you're going to be in New Zealand. Just so you know.
I know that.
Just so you know.
No,
but
no.
look, you're feeling. There are also normal, you know, a mother
I'm sure it
wanting
is
to
normal,
be near
yeah.
her son when he gets married. That's normal stuff. Listen, that's
it's-
up to you to talk to your husband about it. Say, hey, New Zealand's looking pretty good right about now.
He doesn't want to go to New Zealand.
Well, then, you know, so you'll have to go visit your son, evidently.
Yeah, I do.
But
So but what do you think about he's my only offspring and my only family here, and
know
I
what,
was
though?
hoping he was going to be here when I get
you
older.
don't own your son. I don't
No,
own
I
my son.
don't.
My son right here is doing some things that I don't particularly
I
agree
know.
with, but I don't own him. He's not mine.
Yeah.
He was mine to bring up into the
Yeah.
world, to put on his feet, and to let him go out and make choices in his own life, of which he's responsible for. Your son is responsible for. But guess what? It's not wrong for him to want to explore life a little bit
No,
and
I
maybe
know
go
it
see
isn't.
New Zealand. I want to go to New Zealand.
No,
Anybody
I-
else want to go to New Zealand? Let's go visit
Yeah.
her son.
No, I agree with it. Of course I'll go. No, I do agree with that. I think this is probably I have to let go.
Does anybody have a son in Bangkok, Thailand? Because I want to go there too. All right, so I need to go visit my father over in the hospital. Hopefully he'll be able to come back next week. And yes, sir. He says to please tell him we all wish him the best, and I shall. He knows that. He knows that. That's why he gets up in the middle of the night and puts things on Facebook and still does things, because he knows that you folks out there are still listening, watching, and loving on him. So he wants to be up here. I wanted him to be here. I know you guys did too. And go out into the world now. Illuminate your issues. Be who you're supposed to be. Don't try. Just be. Just be. The opportunity will come, and you'll have that inner knowing of how to deal with that moment when that moment happens. And you don't have to think about it, because if you're trying to plan out every little thing, it's not going to happen. And life is not what we think it's going to be. They always say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Okay? We'll see you guys around the world again here for the Sunday Conversation. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
And listening.